All right. Hello, everybody in Facebook land. How
What's
are you,
happening,
Bradley?
everybody?
How's it going, Bradley Dean?
It's going well. Just another day in the quarantine.
Right?
Yep. But I've moved my location down to my studio now. This is where I'm spending a lot of my time, it seems like.
That's cool. Yeah, I know. I know. We've been in our little caves doing our thing, but that's pretty cool. I like that. And I like the stuff you've been mixing too.
It's funny how, for the longest, I started as a musician before I was ever a mixer. And now that there's no shows to mix, I find myself picking up my guitar and, walking around the house, and now I'm in the studio, miking an amp up and, let's do this. And it's kind of brought me back around to playing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I think about on a daily basis now is, playing my guitar. What song am I going to record today?
And you have recorded a couple already that I seen very cool, and we might play one at the end. There might be a little surprise there, maybe.
I
But
made myself do that.
speaking of music, and before I move on to whatever we'll discuss today, I want to say thank you to Jeff Subaru from his band Patrito for letting us use his music to go in and out of the show. So I appreciate that, Jeff. Shout out to you. Thank you. And so you were talking that you were a player, and that to me, I always, because I was surrounded by musician stuff, there was something I enjoyed, but it was never my full-on passion. But you were a musician first, right?
Yes.
So
A
tell us
musician
about that a little
from
bit.
I was 10.
Since you were 10, so I wasn't even born, basically, is what you're saying.
You had to say that, didn't you?
I had to.
I feel like the fact that that I still am a musician makes me a better mixer, because I feel like I'm more in touch with the musicians on stage and I can speak the language, and the mix is more musical approach as to a technical approach. It's dynamics and feeling and movement, same as you would be on stage.
Yeah, I mean, as far as music, I only, I like playing drums and percussion, and I did keyboards and percussion for a while in a band, but, I started with them as their front of house guy, and then they needed a band member to play that because I was playing that stuff from front of house, believe it or not. And then it was cool for a while. I did it for maybe 10 years, being part of a band. But to me, mixing was always my passion, so that's what I always wanted to do full time. And when I started doing it full time, then of course it was always in a musical way. Even though, we try to educate ourselves and learn the technical aspect of it, I feel that we always, I always mix. I'm always mixing musically. Everything I do, any move that I make, any cue that I always try to make it a musical thing. So
It's almost like you're playing the mix.
yeah,
If that makes any sense. It's like you're performing. That's the best way I can describe that.
yeah, and you have to become, I think, like another band member. I would think. You feel like you're one of them, and you're turn things up and down and panning them, and kind of having sort of a active mixed role, active like an instrumental role.
You're part of it.
I like to feel part of it, at least. So I always treat it that way, as if the mixer is an instrument. I would assume it's the same for you.
Yeah. And you have to get in the music when you're mixing it. You got to learn that music and know every single little, tom hit and guitar solo and, every little cue that's going to happen, because then it really becomes like you're performing when you know all the parts.
Yeah.
How
And
many times have you air drummed in Monitor World?
oh my God, all the time. I'm always there drumming something.
I'm air drumming. That's about all I ever do. I don't really air guitar, but air drumming in front of house, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you gotta.
People think, what's he doing, man? Is he twitching, or he's got Tourette's?
Yeah. Hey, but and so when you were saying learning the music, that is something that we always talk about too. How do you prepare? Like I'll tell you how I prepare as well, but how do you prepare when you got a new gig, or what's your usual steps, the usual steps that you take when you're preparing for a gig?
I think the first step I do is I listen to the music. I get a hold of all the CDs, and just study the music, and then start taking notes. If I don't already know the music by the band that I'm about to mix, which fortunately for me, I usually know the music and I'm familiar with all the songs. But, I'll take notes as, for delay cues or what type of reverb is on the vocal in this song, or, verb on drums and guitar solos and any effects. Just educate myself as much as I can when it comes to the music. And then, once I've done that, then it's just a matter of, okay, so you roll into the gig and you sit down at the console and you lay your channel strips out and, start from input to high pass filter and just go from there. I can kind of start dialing in a mix without ever hearing the instruments a lot of times. Cause I know, for instance, for kick drum, I'm going to high pass at 35. For a guitar, I might high pass at 120. Certain things I'm going to do to get myself in the ballpark right away.
Yeah, because it's easy to get caught up on like, well, this is what I do. I have to get all this stuff done. But in order to get it going, if you're starting quickly from scratch, high pass, there's certain go-to things that you already know. And
you kind of already know what you're going to do to a kick drum or, snare drum, floor tom, vocals. There's certain boosts or cuts that you always tend to gravitate towards, I think.
Yeah. Hey, look, we got some people who joined us. Of course, Leonardo from DPA is here. Michael Sweeney, Rick Carmona. Guess who's here asking about plugins?
Andreas, it's his favorite subject.
Shramo, Eric Schramm, what's up? What's going on? Sean Sully's here. Oh, no pressure. Now we got to talk about some cool stuff. So yeah, I mean, continuing on that realm of things that we were discussing, even though those are the usual things we used to do as far as not get caught up on certain things, I always tend to use templates, either console templates or presets that I already had predetermined, and that allows me kind of to get sound check or prepare for an artist a lot quicker, because I have things that are my go-to, either processing chains or whatever, and another thing I do to prepare myself is, of course, the usual input list, output list, and create my file offline that way. But I watch a lot of, as a monitor engineer, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I listen to the music, which is always going back to what you said at the beginning. You listen to the music. At the end of the day, we're going to be mixing music. We can get very technical and run pink noise through a PA or through wedges or to whatever, and time align things or whatever. But at the end of the day, people are going to be listening to music, and we're going to be mixing music. So that's something that I always emphasize, that I want to deliver. We're going to be mixing music. So some of those things for me are crucial, to be able to expedite the process. We don't have the luxury of having a lot of time to, when you first start with an act, to like have 2-3 hours, or sometimes your first gig is at the gig. You're going to first see the artist when they're hitting that first note.
Exactly. So I've had a couple of those shows.
Oh yeah, and you gotta have some kind of template, I think, to start with. It might not be the fine-tuned template, the final, but at least to get you going. I think that's a good way. And now with technology, it's so much easier. We used to eyeball everything on festivals and just set the gains and do all the stuff just by eyeballing it, and then we'll just go. We knew, I set my compressor, I'm going to put a 0 this, and then I just adjust my gains, and I knew I was good to go to start. Nothing crazy was going to happen, but
you're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Correct. You can't just expect it to be.
Just go with what you know.
Yeah, and then just go from there. So one of the bands that I know, of course, we're both part of the audio team for Henrique Iglesias at the moment, and we've been there for many years now, and it's a killer gig. It's a lot of fun, and we go to a lot of exotic places around the world, and always confront a lot of cool challenges, as well as some of them that are not that pleasant, but just makes us better engineers, right? And because of those experiences, like the one we shared last time on episode 1 about the Sri Lanka show and how the equipment was in boxes, and a lot of people got a kick out of that.
Random boxes on the field.
Yeah, random boxes on the field.
Andres that day.
Andres was there. Yes, he was. Andres Restrepo, he's our production manager. So, what's up, Andres? And you know who joined right now? Emmett O'Malley.
And my mom is listening in.
Yeah, look at that. Edgar David Garcia, what's going on? So
So speaking of Andreas, you know what his favorite pastime is, right?
talking about plugins, maybe,
Either coming to Monitor World or front of house when we're traveling with profiles and
and
tearing them
heckle. Oh
apart.
yeah, oh yeah, opening them up.
Yep.
And but you know what? It's funny because he would, he's really good at just, he's like MacGyver, you know.
Oh,
So when we have had issues in certain places where either something was broken or whatever, and like he would literally come in, all right, let's do this, and he would just open it apart, and we'll grab parts from one console to put it on the other, and like he will make it work. He's like our little guardian angel when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah, because that profile might have traveled on the back of a, horse and buggy coming from Romania to Bulgaria or something.
yeah. Hey,
Him-
another good friend here, Dan Keeney. He's an engineer and musician too, around where in the area that I live in Brentwood. He's asking a question. Maybe we should address questions while we're at in the same subject. He's asking, do we use recorded shows for virtual sound check?
Every day.
Absolutely. It's an incredible tool for us.
Yeah. And it just could be one show from wherever. It doesn't really matter. Spin it up, listen to the PA, put your music on, make sure the PA sounds like it should sound, and then spin your tracks up. And I find that usually I'm, 90% of the way there with the PA just on tracks alone. And then we do the line check, you're pretty much there, ready to do the show.
Yeah.
Everything.
I agree. It's an incredible tool to be able to do that.
Tool for sure.
Yeah, and I think like in your case, it allows you to hear the PA, and because we're not running in this case, we're not running like a loud band that has Marshall stacks or nothing. Nothing from the stage will really interfere with
There's
your
really
sound.
no stage volume that you have to take into account when you're running the tracks.
Correct. So that allows us to, for me, check all my monitor mixes, check in-ear packs, which there's tons of them, and then also to refine things. If I get any notes from my artists or even band members, they go, hey, on this song maybe I'll need a little bit more click on this part or on the intro, and then after that no. Or if I heard something the night before where I made a note, I can literally just go back, loop a certain area, fine tune maybe some gates or compression or effects, delays, reverbs, anything, and it just makes it a lot better. Having that capability helps me every day. Every day we show up. The first thing we do, well, after going to catering, first thing we do is we set up our virtual sound check and we start listening to the previous show, and we start dialing, anything that needs to be refined.
That's it.
We got to do it. So Emmett O'Malley says, "What's up, ninjas?"
All right. So
Anyway, go ahead.
I want to ask you about one of your most enjoyable gigs that you've had prior to working with Henrique.
Oh wow.
The standout gigs that you had that really like satisfied you everywhere, as a mixer, as a musician, as a listener of music.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, but one that stands out is for sure Tear for Fears. For me, because I was a fan always. When I got that call through my buddy Dougie Kimball, originally it was going to be for front of house, and then because he was going to go out to do something else, and then he ended up coming back, and then the monitor position opened. And obviously, for those familiar with Tear for Fears, I actually have a little. For those familiar with Tear for Fears, you all know that their music is just, the production is just so cool and so refined as far as the mix goes, and
Lots of effects.
oh my God, lots of effects and everything's just so cool that immediately I was just drawn to making sure I was going to nail this. I was going to try to really listen to the music and make sure I get those effects and make sure I get all that other cool stuff happening and and just to try to nail the production aspect of their music in their ears, you know. And it definitely made a mark for me because when we were doing the rehearsals, I was preparing for it, you know, and I was, you know, as being the new guy, you're always concerned. But like I said, I did the homework. I was listening to the music constantly to make it be second nature for me, knowing solos or little arrangements, little guitar licks, little keyboard stuff, and make sure I just knew it to a point where I didn't have to really wait for it or pay attention to it.
And that also makes the artist realize how much you did your homework as well.
Yeah, of course. They know. I mean, they've been listening to their own music forever, and sometimes we may think that the artist, they just want to hear themselves, and it is what it is. But they're paying attention. They're paying attention. And then I also, because I came highly recommended by Doug, then there was that pressure as well. And then the previous engineer, you know, they had a good rapport with him. So, you know, I had to come in and do well. And it worked out really good. I mean, I had everything dialed. They were really cool. They literally just didn't really ask for anything at the beginning. It was just like they came, did the rehearsal, and left. And I was kind of worried. I was like, oh man, what happened? And they were just didn't ask for anything. Now the following day, then they start getting into details, you know, into refining their mixes and getting things like that. But it was actually a great experience and one of my favorites because I was a fan always, you know, mostly because I'm an 80s kid and all those sounds and gated reverbs and a lot of verbs and delays and choruses, I just love putting those in mixes, and I've always been into that stuff, you know, sometimes to was it my demise sometimes, and maybe I always want to make something else sound a little too 80s, but I just like that sound, you know.
That's it. Exactly.
You know, but yeah, that was for sure mine. Karen Dunn is here. Ron Gilchrist. What's up, you guys? Pedro, what's going on? So let me ask you then. What was that one gig for you that just like me, you know, you enjoyed the music, that was really cool, and how was it working for them, and you know, how did you get the call?
I'm going to say that gig for me would have to be Garbage. For the obvious reasons, you know, getting to work with Butch Vig, Billy Bush, Shirley Manson, and, you know, Duke and oh, my mind has run a blank. The other guitar player. Hold on.
He's probably not watching.
So I get a call from ML Procise, a good friend of mine who was originally at Showco, now then at Claire Brothers, and he's, you know, passed away. Rest in peace. He calls me and says, "Hey, I'm going to throw your name in for this gig, Garbage." And I'm like, "Oh wow, Garbage, cool." You know, because I knew the music, I knew the people involved, and Steve Marker, that's the guitar player's name. Don't want to leave him out. So I get the call, and, you know, ML tells me that, you know, the guy who usually mixes them isn't going to come back for the tour, and he's responsible for choosing the front of house engineer. And we didn't know each other, but we had a mutual friend, and that was Brad Maddox. And so I'm thinking, you know, how can I get my name in to this gig to give me a shot at getting it when the front of house guy that's leaving doesn't know me? And I thought, you know what, I'm going to send Brad Maddox an email and just ask him if he'll vouch for me. And he did. And so then I get a call from Billy Bush, and we had a nice conversation, and, you know, about music and, you know, about my background. And, you know, I don't know, maybe a week or so later, I get the call that, hey, you're going to LA to do Garbage. And so, so we get into rehearsal, which is spent like a month, I think, at Mates, with a profile and a Pro Tools rig. You know, I had their CDs that I played every day, listening to the music, working on the mixes. I would record everything that the band was performing during the rehearsal. And then the next morning I would come in early. I'd be the first one in, which is where the name Fixing to Get Mixing came from.
Ah.
I go in. So I'm showing up every morning, like hours before everybody. And the tour manager's like, what are you doing here so early? I'm like, I'm fixing to get mixing. And it just kind of stuck. So, several years later, I decided that's going to be my company. So, we go through about a week of rehearsing and recording, and I'm doing playback and mixing and listening to the records. And one day Billy comes in the room and he's like, hey, Butch wants to hear something. And I'm like, oh, cool. Because I hadn't really had much interaction with anybody up to that point. They kind of just left me to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And so the song was Paranoid, and there's a vocal tag in there where it's like a filtered, line. And so I'm rehearsing the mix, and I nailed the filtered vocal. And so Butch comes in and he sits down. I play the track and I'm nervous. I'm shaking. I'm like, I don't know what he's going to think. I think it sounds good. And I play the track, and that filtered vocal line comes up, and I hit it. And he's like, he stands up and pats me on the back, and he's like, sounds great, Bradley. And he walks out of the room, and I'm thinking, whoa, wait a minute. Like, don't you want to know what I'm doing to your drums? This image, or this, what I thought was going to happen when he walked in the room, like, he's going to want to know what I'm doing to his drums for sure.
Wow.
How I'm processing things. He didn't want to know anything. He just listened to the song. It sounded like, I got the, what the record sounded like. I nailed Shirley's filtered vocal line, and that was it. And then from then on, it was like, I was in. I guess he realized, I did my homework. And that was like 13 months of, just a great time, on a personal level, on a musical level. I got to, and I ended up mixing pretty much everything that went out to broadcast or was released on DVD. It was pretty much always, hey, it's coming from your console. Nobody gets a feed. It's your mix, so don't mess up. So no pressure there.
Yeah, right.
It was a true challenge, and to earn the respect of somebody like, Garbage, to earn their respect to where they trusted me was, that's like a feeling like no other,
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
That's killer.
Good time. And then, of course, Garbage led me to Henrique.
How so?
Mixing a band with music and tracks. Same with Henrique, a band with tracks. I guess Carlos figured I would know what to do with it, and it's not that difficult.
Well, there is artists or bands that have that hybrid setup of a very killer band and has tracks to just kind of complement certain things. This is a certain art to mixing that, to where it doesn't sound where the tracks are overpowering the live stuff, or where the live stuff is overpowering the tracks. I think there's a certain way of doing that where it's important that it gets captured the proper way. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose of having one or the other. I think it has to be a good blend.
It's a good balance, and that throws it all back to listening to the music.
Yeah.
You want to hear everything. Everything complements everything else.
This is lady named Alicia Turner Divins
Yeah.
asking who drives the master bus. But hold on, here's another question before I get to that. Before you get to answering that.
Master bus.
Uh-huh.
She loves that.
I know. So Michael Sweeney's asking, what's our typical wireless count between mics and ears? We're running like around 54 channels of wireless, I believe, total, including Backline. It's a pretty big number, but I know there's a lot of other productions that probably have even more. But I think it's around 54. That's including Backline. We have 18 channels of in-ears, and then the rest are handhelds and body packs for percussion instruments. And then we have, Chris Sharp, aka Sharpie, who is our amazing audio tech / RF coordinator. and he takes care of all of that. He sweeps the frequencies and takes care of coordinating all the wireless. Even if we're gonna go do a festival, and he coordinates with locals to make sure we don't step on them, they don't step on us. So he takes care of that. So shout out to Chris Sharpie, you're the best. And then who else here? Well, Alicia, who drives the master bus? I guess. You want to answer that, or you want to answer that privately? Who drives the master bus, Bradley Dean?
The master bus, and what is the master bus? Also known as the mix bus.
Yeah, also known as the mix bus.
Is it one S or two S's?
Here's one more before we go into, because that's going to be a deep conversation. I think the master bus. No, maybe a little deep, but Michael's also asking. When you're in playback with tracks, are you feeding timecode to lighting? Yes, there is timecode being fed from playback to lighting and video. Even if the song doesn't have tracks itself, they're running the timecode from there, is my understanding, as far as that works. That's not necessarily our world, but as far as I know, that's how it works, right, Bradley?
Yes, and it goes straight to lighting.
Yep. And then they split it up among themselves there somehow. Let's see. So, all right. So, starting with that, who drives the master bus, and what is your master bus?
Okay, so
live. Let's start with live.
Let's go with live. Live. Who's driving the master bus? It's in the lead position. I guess would be Shadow Hills.
Yeah.
Mastering compressor. Followed by Brainworks Digital V3, into the Fatso by Empirical Labs, and then finally the Sonox, is it Sonox? Oxford Limiter.
Yeah.
That's my mix bus chain for live. Each one doing a little bit. There's two stages of compression in there with the Shadow Hills and with the Fatso. And stereo imaging comes from the V3 with a little bit of shine, on the top end, like a shelf around 11 or 12K, just the tiniest bit of air.
But you're doing that on the left-right side, not on the side part, not on the mono, not on the center, right?
Just on the left-right side. Even though there has been times when I've used the midsection as like a little bit of a notch, just for however the PA summing up in the center of the room. And believe it or not, that works extremely well. And then following it up with the limiter. And the limiter is not really, I'm not limiting the range of my mix to be like a constant level, because I don't think, your mix shouldn't start at one volume and remain the same volume all the way through the show. There's dynamics to the show. There's quiet songs, there's loud songs. The limiter's just there to keep things in check. Maybe there's an 808 drop or something. It's going to grab that. For the most part, the limiter's not really ever hitting. It's not ever doing much. It's just sitting there. But it's there just in case.
Yeah, so again, we go back to making a musical mix and just having the tools that you're using just to kind of keep an eye on things, but not necessarily a must. Like this is just for a certain color, right, or flavor that you're looking for, right?
Yeah, Shadow Hills is probably only hitting a half a dB of compression, and it's that compressor has 3 different types of transformers, one nickel, steel, and iron. So each one of those gives you a different sound.
Yeah.
Mine falls under, I think I'm on the iron setting, which is kind of the middle of the road. And, Fatso, it might be tickling a dB or so. It's not a whole lot. I just want each plug-in to do just a little bit. There's not one doing all the heavy lifting, so to speak. So what do you got?
It's funny because I'm going to put mine up on the screen too. It's very similar, except actually it's the same, except at the end I always have my ML4000 ML4000 by Mac DSP. I also use the Shadow Hills for a very light mastering compression. It's also touching up half a dB maybe, I think I covered up the EQ for some reason when I took the screenshot, but same thing. I added a little air, and I used the BrainWorks from Plug-in Alliance Digital V3 also for stereo imaging.
The stereo imaging
Yeah,
on a thing is amazing.
it's pretty cool. And for the in-ears, to me, it just seems to it helps me place things a little better. You know, that it kind of opens up the center for me to keep my artist right in the middle, but it also allows me like to filter or to add something. You know, I'm also adding a little bit of air on the sides, and sometimes I add it in the middle depending on whose mix it is. But this is usually my chin. Then I go into Fatso, and then I end with a ML4000 for limiting just a little bit, just to make sure I can drive those in-ears, and I will never clip. And then for if it's a very heavy mix, I'll probably engage the multiband compressor just to kind of grab those problem frequencies on the sections that need it, like very lightly, maybe on the low mids or high mids, so that way their ears won't get fatigued and for their mixes not to get muddy. If anything, it's more of a just kind of to keep it in check, like you said. But our chain is the same, and it's funny because we're always talking. Andres' dream just came a reality. We're talking about plugins.
We might.
He probably left already. He probably just said, "I'm gonna join in and I'm gonna leave." If not, enjoy some plug-in conversation, my friend. So, so yeah, I mean, this shows you that we're very alike, and we kind of share a lot of the same ideas when it comes to how we process things. For me, it's a very, I like to do broad strokes on things. So, this being part of my mix bus going into the in-ears, and I use this something very similar if it's from a house, but I've been mostly focusing on monitors now. That it allows me to kind of color and set up what my whole mix will sound like. And then as I'm bringing stuff in, then it already has that certain color and that certain vibe. It already has that little more of a tighter sound before I send it out to the in-ears,
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. I got the answer, my answer.
Yeah.
But I want your answer.
Uh-oh.
What led you to use the BrainWorks Digital V3?
Well, for me, the stereo imaging is a huge thing, but also the EQ is so precise, it's so surgical, and the fact that it's a mid-side EQ, yes, there are other ones now, of course, there's plenty now, but this one to me it allows me just to be very precise about certain things. But I believe that, I'm not sure if we started using it around the same time and we kept sharing.
I think we did.
Ideas and like approaches and, hey, did you try this? Try this, try doing this to it. And that's the one thing that is pretty cool about how we collaborate, is that we're always bouncing ideas off each other and just trying to see and learn from what we do, But I will say that the fact that I have a mid-side EQ where I can, and for those who are not familiar with a mid-side EQ, it allows you to basically EQ separately what's in the middle versus what's on the sides. So we can add a little brightness or filter something out of the sides without affecting your center. And that's very valuable to me. And I would assume also for you, when you're doing some kind of EQ for the PA, like or for a particular input or a group or your mix bus, if you need to filter something out so it doesn't affect like the runway, probably. I would assume you might be able to do that, right?
Exactly. I mean, like I mentioned before about the summation of the PA sometimes in the center of the room where I'm sitting, I've used that EQ just to notch like maybe a very narrow, 1 dB cut of like 180 or 200 just to clean up the center. And it doesn't touch the sides. And a lot of times in the center of the room, it's, I'm in the midst of that big runway. So there's really just me and the security guards that are hearing it, but I've got the tools to fix it. So I do. Yeah. But I got the idea to use that plugin specifically for the stereo imaging portion from an Andrew Shep's tutorial.
Yeah.
That was part of his
That's, you
template.
know what? That's right. And I think that's the part that I think I was forgetting to mention. That's true.
That's where we saw it. So I
Yes.
kudos to Andrew Sheps for that little tasty little tidbit.
You know, that's right. That was when we started watching those videos, what, maybe 2, 3 years ago, maybe a little more. And we started watching this video, and that's where we got that from. You're right. I forgot about that.
Ever since religiously.
Yes. And that's
Mix
actually part of my studio bus too, as well, which is obviously what he does. But
my studio, my mix bus chain in the studio.
and when we
Same.
incorporated that live, it made a world of a difference. So here's a question from Eric Schramm. Schrammo. He's a friend of mine, guitar player. What's
Can I
that?
touch that real quick from Dan Kenny?
Yes, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
The original Shadow Hills over the newer Class A. Well, I can only use the older Shadow Hills because that's what Universal Audio handles in the real-time rack that I carry live. Now, when Avid starts supporting all the plug-in Alliance stuff, then I'll go to the newer one. But I think I use the newer one in the Pro Tools land. You know, it's got the mid-side thing. It's got, you know, stereo imaging. There's a couple more features on it. You know, sonically, I think it's pretty similar, but it's the added features. They're both great. That's my favorite mix bus compressor ever, I think. Okay, so now your question on
Oh, okay.
in-ears.
I like these questions, huh? See, who was asking? It was Shram. How do you do each band member's mixes? Do you start with a stereo mix for everyone and then add more of me to each player? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an approach that I have taken many times. You know, at the end of the day, you know, the mixes are very specific to what they want. Some people like utility mixes, where, and by that I mean where they don't care whether it sounds like an album or whatever. They just want it to be just enough of whatever they need to hear, like a basic mix, so they can just perform. They don't care if I add reverb. They don't care if it sounds, you know, tight or if it's pan. They just want to hear themselves and a little bit of click or the guy next to them or something. You know, I even had someone, remember, I used to always make fun of Joe. Joe's our bass player, because his mix was always almost like if it was a wedge mix. You know, kick, his bass and his vocal, and almost basically nothing else. Maybe a little click. And I used to always, you know, bust his chops because of it. But the truth is, if that's what they want, that's what they need, that's what they'll get. That's my job, to give them exactly what they want, right? But answering to Eric, yes, I have done that many times, and that allows me to get mixes done very quickly. As I use templates and presets, and I have a console already laid out for any new artist or whatever, then I let's say I have a mix already dialed up, and then I'll copy that mix to the guitar player's mix, and all I do is raise him up on that mix and store that as their mix. Do the same with the bass player, and then from there, whatever they want removed or lowered, then I do that. I don't keep adding more of me. I always have, I know at what point, what's my max that I could give someone in their ears, and I just keep turning things down, and they can always turn the pack up. So that's a good question. Look who's here. Mauricio's here. Mauricio!
Cassidy's here. Posse
Cassidy's
Hira.
here. Oh, yeah, look at that.
Tater was on there. Yeah,
Hey,
Tater's
Tater. Let's see. So no more questions for now. Oh, wait. This comes into it. Yes. Eric is asking, is the stage crew on ears as well, and is comm sent through you as well? Yes. We don't, actually, funny enough, we don't use comm. We have it as an absolute emergency if we need, but we, you know,
not answering the phone.
nobody's picking up the phone in the middle of the show. And if anybody does, will be either Brad's system engineer that evening, or Sharpie, and then, you know, he'll relay the message. But what we do have is a full talkback system. And I think we touched up a little bit of this on our last live thing. And basically, you know, my talkback, I have, you know, events or function buttons set up on my console where I can talk from my talkback to anybody. I can talk directly to Henrique or Gwen, whoever I'm working at the time with, and the MD. I can talk to our backline techs. I can talk to Brad directly whenever he wants to hear me. Sometimes he turns me off, but uh, I'm able to talk to anybody the same way they're able to talk to me. Certain key people, when they need to address stuff that is just for us among the techs, then yeah, they can talk straight to me from their talkbacks. Our backline techs also have talkbacks, so they can talk to me. We can solve any issues, and nobody ever finds out that we're having any issues. We can have full-on conversations if needed. Of course, we keep them short, but as whatever we need, we can discuss and fix. We don't, and we also have the radios. Once we start the show, whatever radio channel we are for production, that comes through my in-ears. And at the same time, my tech, Chris Sharpie, he's also listening to that as well. So I'm able to talk to him, and if we hear something on the radio that needs to be addressed, then we can also hear that. So yeah, that whole system is set up minus comms, no comms. Tater's still here.
I can't ever hear any of that during the show.
No, it would be impossible. Even if there's been times where, and at that point is when we use a comm, because
I can never hear that thing either. All I hear is.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Let's see what else. There was. Do you see any other questions there?
I don't see any other questions. Do you want to talk about the studio mix bus chain? Yeah,
we can. Absolutely. You want me to talk about mine first, or you want to talk about? Well, because I know we do mostly live, but I've also done studio parallel, just and maybe people assume that we only do live sound, but we do a lot of mixing in the studio, and we're always collaborating as far as checking on each other's mixes. We're always sending each other songs to check on things. So I will show my mix bus in the studio, which is very similar probably. So on the screen, I'm using the Neve 33609 as my starting point compressor, but that varies because I always, depending on the style of music, I'll use that or I'll use the Shadow Hills. And I also got this is a very Shep's channel strip in some ways, and then the Fatso, and then I have the UAD Fatso, and then the UAD Oxide, run through the BX V3 plug-in alliance for that stereo imaging, and if I need to filter anything, or sometimes I'll add a little air, but I also have the JJP Waves Pultec EQ emulation that I use mostly for the color of what I'm doing on my overall mix. So after going through all this processing, if I feel that it lost a little, maybe a little low end or a little bit of crispiness overall, I might have a shelf that starts at 5K or 3K, and I just add a little bit of that and maybe a little bit of low at 60, and then it ends with a limiter. So the concept is fairly similar to what I do live, which is kind of cool that we're able to kind of go back and forth now. I can always even set up presets here at home of things that I want to try, and I just bring them to on the road with me, and I try them out. Now I'm able to get away with this because I'm not running any wedges or side fills. With Gwen we run side fills, but they're only for the dancers. Everybody's on in here, so because of that, I'm able to get away with a lot of stuff, like adding a lot of air, or making things a little crisper than normal because we're not running any wedges. But I like that combination of and the flexibility that we have, that I could try things in my studio, bring them in, test them out live, or if I come up with something really cool while I'm mixing in-ears, I'll try them out in the studio too, which I like that. I like to have that flexibility and the option to do that, How about you, Bradley Dean?
Okay, for me, and I'm trying to remember the order because I just did the screenshot and sent it to you last night.
I'm going to put it up on the screen so people can see it as well.
I want to say that I know for a fact it starts with the Slate virtual console mix bus
Yeah.
channel on the SSL 4000 setting, I believe. And then from there, it's going to go into Shadow Hills. And from there, I'm going to say it's probably going into the Clairphonic parallel equalizer, which is a really cool thing. That
I see that. That's pretty cool.
It's really cool. It's you can focus on the mid range and put a sheen on the top end, and it's really a cool plugin. Unfortunately, you can't use it live. And then there's also the V3 on there, and again, that's just for the imaging portion of things. Fatso is on there. And then I just got a hold of this Plugin Alliance AMEC mastering EQ a few weeks ago that I stuck in there. It's a phenomenal sounding equalizer. That is, see, well, there's my tape machine. The ATR 102 is in there. And then I put this mastering EQ as the very last chain before the limiter. And that's my chain. Couple of things I can use live, a couple things I can't. I'd love to be able to use a tape machine live, but unfortunately the latency won't allow it.
Yeah.
Can't really do it. But, the mix bus chain has obviously a few more things in it in the studio than I would use live. But again, each plugin is doing a little bit of something. It's not like I'm using 8 things because it's a lot of, because the mix sounds so bad that I need all this stuff to make up the difference. It's these finishing touches.
Yeah, and I approach it a little similar in the sense of I like broad strokes. So it's, that way I do a little bit on each of them instead of doing a lot on one of them, because then it becomes noticeable. I kind of want it to be seamless. I think, is it Posse Hara, right? He's asking about latency for in-ears. So I haven't encountered any issues. I don't know what the exact number is, and I should. I could be wrong, but it might have been 400 samples maybe, which is not much in the big scheme of things. But I usually go a lot of it just obviously trying to use the ones that have the least amount of DSP requirements. But I haven't encountered any issues with latency where I feel that something's odd or that the musician themselves feels like there's something really weird. Most of the plugins that I'm using on that chain for in-ears do not require a lot of DSP power. But I will answer the exact number because I have that written down. That I had a small chart of the couple of things that I wrote down for that reason, and I'll post it later on the comments. I'll answer you for that. If you want to know the exact number, but nothing that I perceived that was an issue with anybody listening to their mix. Let's see, and I have not. I didn't measure it, but I did. When you right click on it, it tells you what the latency is. Let's see, who else has a question? Paula, do you think it's okay to use? So they're asking, and this could apply to you. I guess if you want to take this one, Brad. It says, is it Elias Kurumpalis? Hi, I have a UAD Apollo 8. Do you think it's okay to use it as a hardware insert analog on main left and right? My first answer would be yeah, why not? Because
exactly, why not?
If you're in front of house,
there are people doing it.
Yeah.
I know Michael Connor does it, and I think Andy Meyer's doing it.
Yeah.
I know a few people that do it. So yeah, why not?
Like I wouldn't do it maybe at monitors, like going out on an analog insert on monitors.
Yep.
But from the house, totally, right?
Yeah, my whole environment's full of latency, so
that's true.
There you go. Just put it in there. But yeah, because there's a lot of good things that you can use, and you can definitely hear the difference when you use some of their products.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They got. I mean, every company obviously has their color and the way they do things. UAD definitely stands out. Plugin Alliance stands out for me a lot. A lot of elements of Wave stand out, which is why I use them. I think I have a different. Let me show. when I'm not using the UAD stuff, I think I have one that if you see on the screen, I have a different version of my mix of my chain for in-ears, which is using the CLA mixdown, which is pretty badass. It has that glue function and a little bit of drive to, if you want to overdrive the bus a little bit, and then the same. I have the Digital V3 plugin alliance, and I end with Mac DSP ML4000. So that's just a different version. If I don't have my UAD live rack with me, so I just wanted to point that out. Let's see what else. Expanding on that, well, we talked about a mix bus, which we're pretty similar there. But it's again, we always end up going back to the music side of it. I think that's important to always emphasize. If it sounds right and it feels right, chances are what you're doing is good. I think a lot of us can get caught up on the details of the technical aspect of it and forget about that at the end of the day we're mixing music, and I think that's important.
It's very important. The music is the most important thing, because what's the audience come to see and listen to?
Now, have you been using, or once you went digital, have you used outboard gear at all? Have you experimented that way, or once you went in the box, you stayed in the box?
There was one piece of gear that I used that I experimented with, and it was a great piece of gear, and it was by Sonic Farm, I believe is the name of the company. It was called the Creamliner, and it was, I want to say, the premise of that was adding, odd and even style harmonics. I mean, it was way more than that, but it was only a couple of knobs. And what it did it took the digital out of the mix and it made it warm and fuzzy. And I mean, I think that was the one piece of gear that I carried for a while that I thought, I mean, it was very subtle, but it was one of those things when you turn it off, you're like, oh, okay. So I just went from digital to analog with this piece of gear is pretty much what I did. And that was it. It was Sonic Farm, the Creamliner.
The Creamliner.
Yep, it was called Creamliner. And I want to say, I know somebody's carrying one in a rack because I saw it.
Really?
I think it's Chris Raybold. I think he uses one.
Really? That's cool. He's doing a lot of stuff with Pooch, right? They're doing their online discussions, which are pretty good. I was watching a couple yesterday. Very interesting stuff that they always touch up on, and what's cool about us doing this stuff online, which is kind of new for us, and definitely taking us out of our comfort zone, is that as we learn this whole new thing that we could be doing to reach out to people and stuff like that, it's we're learning from our colleagues too who have more experience doing it. Robert Scoville has the lab, which is pretty badass, and he really dives into really the technical stuff, and that is very interesting. Like definitely when I'm watching, I'm like geeking out on like all the science of what we do, which is pretty cool.
I think it's good to be able to share with people as well.
Absolutely. We didn't invent anything. We're just we learned it from someone. We asked questions and we learned it. I have no issues sharing what I've learned,
Yeah, you can't be afraid to try things. You might not want to try it in an arena full of 15,000 people.
You may not want to try it just like that. But
sound check, you want to try something new, There's lots of cool toys out there that we get to play with.
So there is, maybe we'll take one or two more questions. Let's see. There's one from Derek. Eddie Brad's question: what type of tool, software, or hardware is missing from your arsenal of tools? What would you like to see available? That's a good question.
That is a good question.
For me, off the top of my head, maybe in-ear monitors that are already digital, given that they're keep removing and getting rid of frequency bandwidth for us, so maybe a digital in-ear system. So that would be pretty cool. I would like for all of Plugin Alliance plugins to be available to use.
I was going to say, what about some hardware device that allowed you to use anything plug-in wise that, that's out there?
Like a bridge between anything into our console.
And it's, it connects via digital or coax MADI or,
I like that idea.
It's just something that's like, and it's a small little hardware piece. I mean, how cool would it be to be able to use Slate stuff live, and like you say, all the Plug-in Alliance stuff, and the Cush Audio stuff. There's a lot of cool plugins by them.
Yeah.
Then the possibilities are truly endless.
And I wish that could get worked out where because we're the operators, we're the users of these platforms, and it would be amazing if we just had access to all of it whenever we needed it. Derek also asked, let me see here. What's your favorite DI for guitars? Well, currently we don't use DIs because our pedals have XLR outputs already. That being said, when we have used them, radial DIs are usually our go-to, and they sound great and they're roadworthy, of course. And recently, I tried out the new DIs that Warm Audio has. I've been able to use them in the studio so far, and they sound really good. I took them out on the road right when they asked us to basically turn around and go back home when this whole quarantine thing happened. So I wasn't able to test them on the road, but out here, and so far they sound great too. So there's a lot of good tools out there.
Tech 21 makes a really good bass DIs.
Oh, is that the one that you
Doug Pinnick?
Oh yeah, that thing sounded good.
DI, it's amazing.
But it's more than a DI though, right? It's like a pre, and it has like sonic.
It's a whole sonic palette. I mean, you got distortion and compression and EQ, and it, I mean, it's a kill. You can make it sound like a Marshall amp if you want on the bass. Spans amp, bass driver DI is good for bass guitar. But yeah, I really like the Doug Pinnick better for bass.
Yeah. I want to check one of those out because what you showed me, that thing sounded awesome. No amp, no, it just sounds huge,
It sounds clean, or you can sound like Doug Pinnick.
Yeah. Not a bad thing. So I think we're getting to the end, and I don't see any other questions.
We are to the end.
Huh?
I think we're to the end.
Yeah. Oh, wait. There's one more here. Michael Sweeney's asking, do you both control input gain from the initial stage boxes independently, or is Monitor World the master initial gain setter? We don't do gain sharing. We are still analog split, going to each other's stage racks, and that continues to work great. Of course, there has been a couple instances where we were forced to, because of the circumstances, to use gain sharing. What was that time we were in? I think we were in Sorrento maybe, and we were going to Sardinia out of the blue, like a last minute gig, right?
Pool party or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like some kind of resort private event or something, and
they had one stage rack
for each. They had both consoles, but each console only had one stage rack. So we either completely changed our input list to fit each other's, or we just do it with two stage racks as one and gain share. And we were worried about it, and I knew already that you could do it with Avid, but we'd never done it, and we would have liked to do it at least at a rehearsal, test it out. So we went with it in order to not change any of the because there were no other options. We had to use that.
There was
And
no options.
no, and at least we had our console, so it's not like they were trying to make us use a different console. So that part was good. And we made the monitor board the master, and then Brad's gains, everything sounded the same, everything looked the same, and
Oh,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Nothing changed, right? It just worked.
Oh,
So we had a great experience with gain sharing. We haven't done it officially anymore. We might have done it one time more after that at a rehearsal, just to kind of save on space or something, right? We did that in Miami, I believe, right?
yep.
And it
But
worked.
also the thing is that because we've spent so much time with these inputs and the gain is pretty much dialed in for the microphones that we carry,
Yes.
we always, I mean, I don't know about you, but I barely ever touch input gain anymore.
No, I
Maybe
don't.
Enrique's channel strip gets a touch of, input gain every now and then, but that's kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
haven't touched a gain in I don't know how many years.
yeah. And I
Um,
mean, it worked flawlessly. So I would,
I think I will do it. I think I will do it again, but
you sure about that?
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, again, it's because it either takes us out of a comfort zone. But if we were to start testing it out, it worked and it worked flawlessly. So maybe we can try it and have a couple stage racks on the side just in case. But we'll figure that out. But anyway, all right. So we thank everybody for hanging out with us. This
No
is
Dante.
epic.
No Dante.
Oh, no, Dante. Who asked that? Oh, Michael did. Yeah.
Peter wants to know if we're going to be starring on YouTube later.
No, he wants to know. Oh, I thought he said if this is going to be up. It will be up, Tater. It will be up on Facebook in the same link that once this is over, you can watch it again.
We put it on YouTube.
I think we could. I believe that I'm recording it as well, so I think we could put it on YouTube.
Yes.
Again, we're all learning this stuff, so I'm trying to
You
figure
should
it
be able
out.
to put it on YouTube from
Yeah.
OBS.
It just took me 2 days just to put those headphones in the middle of the screen. Just to put the
ninja
title
logos. That's
just
pretty cool.
Yeah, the ninjas, just to draw it took me a long time just to put the title that says Brad Divins. It took a long
Good
time.
artist.
Yeah, it took me a lot of hours of investigating.
You did it.
When you get audio people trying to learn OBS or learn Photoshop, it's like not a pretty picture.
Yes. No, it's not.
Not a pretty picture. But we have a little surprise for you guys where, Brad earlier in the conversation was talking about how he been focusing on playing some music in his studio. And we all know he used to be a rock star back in the day. He had a lot of hair.
Who was that?
Good looking dude, kicking monitors off the stage if he didn't like the sound. I heard also a little bit of a, diva.
We talked about that last time. That whole
We
monitor
did, yeah. So anyway, thank you everybody. I want to thank one more time Jeff Subaru for letting us use his killer music. The song you heard at the beginning of the broadcast was a song called Auto Water. And you'll hear it also after when we're done. But now, just as a little treat for you guys,
Audio treat.
an audio treat, it will be a little song performed by Bradley Dean Divins
In my studio.
in his
by
studio.
myself.
Oh, and what did you use? What microphone did you use?
Okay, so I used the Slate virtual microphone system, which is the one I'm using now to talk into,
Yeah,
for the guitar.
awesome.
And I used a Warm Audio 251 for the vocal.
Yeah,
And I'm going to say when I mixed it in Pro Tools, it was pretty much a Slate emulation of a 1073 with the Neumann MK279 microphone, maybe.
for the guitar.
The guitar. It was a tiny bit of EQ and then his version of a distressor after the 1073. And the vocal was, I recorded it with the Warm Audio 412 mic pre into the CLA, his LA2A. And then when I mixed it, I used a Plug-in Alliance 9000J SSL strip. and a tiny bit of compression, and that was pretty much it. And then my mix bus chain.
Now going in on your vocal, it was a Warm Audio 251, but then what was the chain going in?
And the chain going in was the Warm Audio 412 into the Warm Audio 2A, WA2A.
It sounded really good. So I hope you guys enjoy this. This is Bradley Dean singing a little ditty for you guys. This was just a little treat, just to show, you know, some extra stuff that, you know, we're not just sound people, I guess I should say it that way. You know,
if you want us to do this again, like, let us know.
Yeah, please hit us up. And if you have any other questions, or if you want us to do something, a particular topic, we're happy to address it. Hit us up on all the social media platforms and Instagram, Facebook. We'll be happy to answer any questions even after this. So thank you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy this little song with Bradley Dean Divins. See you guys later. Bye.
Thanks for
I hear that train a-comin', it's rolling round the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps a-rolling on down to San Antone. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. Rich folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep a-moving, and that's what tortures me. Well, if they freed me from this prison, if that railroad train was mine, I'd bet I'd move it on a little farther down the line. Far from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow